Salagoste.
I'm Bacaylan.
And I'm Bacaylan, and today we'll be discussing to you the core ideas behind feminist criticism. Stories shape how we see the world, but what if half the voices are missing? Feminist criticism challenges us to see literature through a new lens, one that hears, values, and empowers women's voices. It is not just theory, it's a movement to read between the lines and find the voices that were silenced. Now I have here a famous quote by Simone de Beauvoir which states that one is not born a woman, rather one becomes a woman. So this famous quote means that being a woman is not just biological, it is shaped by the society. Simone de Beauvoir argues that culture and upbringing teach women how to behave, speak, dress, and live in ways that fit into the society's expectations of femininity. In short, womanhood is not learned. Womanhood is learned and it is not natural. So that is according to Simone de Beauvoir. But what is feminist criticism? So we have here the definition. It is a literary and critical theory that explores the bias in favor of the male gender in literature and which re-examines all literature from a feminist point of view. So it is a literary approach that examines how literature reflects and reinforces gender inequalities. It focuses on how male-centered thinking has dominated literature and aims to highlight to recover the female perspective that has often been ignored or misinterpreted. So feminist criticism is a literary approach that aims to examine how it reinforces the gender inequalities, where in fact during this time the voices of the female are not heard and they are ignored. Now, FC, or the feminist criticism, has two basic principles. Number one is women presented in literature by male writers from male point of view. So, if women in literature written by men are shown as weak, emotional, or dependent, their roles are usually limited to love interests, mothers, or symbols, not full characters. So, during this time, this feminist criticism is that first principle is that when men are writing some stories, they usually often call women as weak and emotional. Then the second one is the women presented in writing of female writers from female point of view. So when women write, they often show the real experience, struggles, and inner lives of women. They challenge stereotypes and give female characters depth and power. So the two premises are actually contrasting because the first one, when men write or wrote a story or a literature, they often call women as weak and their roles are only for mothers and such thing. However, when women write literature, they expresses their real struggles during that time. Now we have here the history of feminism. We have three. The first wave, feminism, the second wave, feminism, and lastly, the third wave, feminism. First is first wave feminism. So we have here women, historical content, women widely are considered to be. First is intellectually inferior. Women were considered less intelligent and physically weaker than men, barring them from leadership roles. So during this time, women are often called by men as weak and they are less intelligent. Then we also have physically weak. From the word itself, of course, the women are weak and their roles are not for leadership and such thing. Then emotional, intuitive, and irrational. So society deemed women overly emotional and illogical, excluding them from several positions. So it is clear that men, according to them, during this time, women are emotional and irrational. So they restrict them from joining several positions in the government. And then next is suited to the role of wife and mother. So again, women, their roles are only for motherhood and wives. So they could not join any position. Then the next one is women could not vote. So during the first wave feminism, women are prohibited to vote, are restricted to vote. Women lack suffrage and political voice. So there are actually no suffrage for women during this time. Next is they were not educated at school, universities, and could only work in manual jobs. So access to education and professional careers was largely denied to women. So they are not, aside from they could not vote, they could also not go to universities and schools. Then lastly, the historical content in the first wave feminism is that a married woman's property and salary were owned by her husband. So upon marriage, women's property and earnings become their husband. So imagine your salary as a woman will be given to your husband. So during the first wave feminism, those are considered that women, they are usually like that. And then we have here the definition of, we have another thing. So there are 3 issues that were faced during the first wave, aside from those mentioned earlier. Rape and physical abuse are legal within marriage. So domestic violence and rape within marriage were not criminal offenses before. So during the first wave, rape and domestic violences are allowed. So if men wants their women or their wives to do such thing, so it's not considered as rape during this time. So women are actually looked. So it's sad to know that during this time women doesn't have that power. Then the next one is divorce available to men, but far more difficult to women. So divorce proceedings heavily favored men, leaving women socially stigmatized. So aside from being raped inside their home, the divorce also is hard for women, unlike for men, which they can easily do the divorce during the first wave feminism. Then another one is that women had no right to their children if they left a marriage. So women actually lost custody of their children in divorce. So aside from it is challenging for them to have the divorce, they are also after the divorce, their children are lost to them because it will be under the custody of their husband, ex-husband rather. Then lastly, we have abortion was illegal. Women had no legal recourse for abortion, even in dangerous or unwanted pregnancy. So first wave feminism is actually very hard and very difficult for women. Then, so first wave feminism refers to a period or feminist activity during the 19th and early 20th century in the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States. So first wave feminism was earliest major feminist movement active in those mentioned countries such as United Kingdom, US, and of course Canada. The key concerns of first wave feminists were education, employment, the marriage, laws, and the plight of intelligent middle-class single women. So it fought for the basic rights for women, especially the right to education, because as I mentioned earlier, one of their struggle or issues faced were that they don't have the right to go to universities and colleges. Fair jobs, because they could not join any positions. Also equal treatment in marriage, because during the first wave, It has always been favored for the men to have divorce. It is easy for them, however, for women, it is hard for them. It is very challenging, and also they will lost their custody to their child once divorce happened. And of course, educated women were often left out of society. So again, first wave feminism, there are a lot of issues that the women are facing. So now I'll hand it over to Jimmy Salagoste to continue our discussion for the second wave feminism.
Alright, since we are done with what feminist criticism is, and we are done also on the issues on what happened during the first wave of feminism, now we will be proceeding to what are the issues that happened during second wave feminism. Now we have here the historical background. Women could attend school and university. Alright, the second wave feminism that happened on 1960 to 1980, which erupted as women having stepped into the workforce during World War II. Now we're pushed back into domestic roles afterward. Although women could now attend school and universities, as what I've said earlier, that women could attend school and university during this time, which is the second wave feminism. Now their lives realities were still bound by a deep-rooted inequality. Why? It is because they were underpaid for the same work. Just like we have here, women did not receive equal pay for the same work. So stigmatized for divorce and objectified in media, because if we have here during the second wave feminism, women did not receive equal pay for the same work. It was easier to gain divorce, but socially frowned upon, and rape and physically abused within marriage were illegal, but husbands were rarely convicted. Now, abortion was still illegal. Women's bodies were objectified in advertising. Now, even though rape within marriage was technically illegal, it was illegal. Now, it was rarely prosecuted because abortion remained criminalized, and women's bodies were used more as marketing tools than as voices of agency. Now, imagine women's body were objectified in advertising. Was it that unequal? Now that's what happened during the second wave feminism. Now we have also here second wave feminism, the second wave of feminism, which occurred in 1960 to 1980, came as response to the experiences of women after World War II. Now the second wave feminism, it was a response after the World War II, it refers to the experiences of women during that time. Now, it dealt with inequality of laws, and it was pioneered by Betty Friedan. Alright, so Betty Friedan didn't just target specific legal inequalities, but it also confronted the cultural, institutional, psychological dimension of gender oppression. Now this movement, or the movement that was led by Betty Friedan, pushed hard for reproductive rights, bodily autonomy, and freedom from domestic confinement, giving birth to a more assertive and inclusive form of feminist activism. Now imagine, as what I said earlier ago, the women, it was easier to get a divorce, but socially frowned upon. Rape and physical abuse within marriage were illegal, but husbands were rarely convicted. And also during this time in the second wave feminism, abortion was still illegal, and women's bodies were objectified in advertising. And that is why the pioneer Betty Friedan, she pushed hard for reproductive rights, bodily autonomy, and freedom from domestic confinement. It is because it is so unequal or injustice for the woman right now. Alright. But as the movement gained ground, cracks appeared in the idea of a single unified female experience. Now, it entered, since we are done with the second wave, the feminism, the first wave feminism, now we will be moving on to what radical feminism is. So a radical feminism, a powerful offshoot of the second wave that did not just seek equality. So a radical feminism is just a seek equality, but also within the system, but question the system itself. Radical feminists argue that patriarchy was not a surface level issue, but a deeply embedded power structure shaping everything from our language to our laws. They emphasize the biological and bodily disadvantages since during on the second wave feminism, the women are so they are really abused. All right, so now let's continue. They emphasize the biological and bodily disadvantages of women's face and how those were manipulated to maintain male dominance. Male dominance. Now, this radical critique during radical feminism laid the foundation for later waves to emerge and diversify, opening the door for broader discussions on race, class, sexuality, and identity. So during on the first wave, there is also inequality. How much more on the second wave after, and it is the response after World War II, which is the one experiences during that time, which is the second wave. And here come the radical feminism, which broadened the discussions on race, class, sexuality, and identity. And now, to continue, may I call on my co-discussant to proceed on what is a liberal feminism.
To continue, let us proceed to liberal feminism. Liberal feminism aims to achieve equal land, political and social rights for women. It wishes to bring women equality into all public institutions and to extend the creation of knowledge so that women issues can no longer be ignored. So liberal feminism focuses on equal rights of men and women, and it believes that women should have the same access to education, jobs, and freedom as men. Let's say, for example, imagine a company wherein only men are promoted to higher positions. Liberal feminists would fight for women to have the same chance to be promoted based on skills and not gender. Liberal feminists work for legal reforms like equal pay, anti-discrimination laws, and access to education. Now, let's talk about feminist criticism. This is a way of analyzing literature, movies, and media by asking how women are portrayed. Are their voices heard, and are they treated fairly? Feminist criticism connects with other fields like, first, language. Feminist criticism and language. Feminists argue that women have to create their own language since the existing language in literature is dominated by male language. Feminists look at how language often favors men. For example, we often say mankind instead of humankind. And words like bossy are often used for women but asserted for men doing the same thing. Language can hide or lessen the role of women, so feminist critics want more equal and respectful words. Another is feminist criticism and psychoanalysis. In Freud's point of view, feminist criticism also uses psychoanalysis, which studies the mind and unconscious desires. This looks at how women are shaped by society and family roles, even from childhood. For example, in fairy tales, girls are often quiet and waiting to be safe. Feminist critics analyze how these stories affect the way women see themselves. Now let us meet some important figures or feminist thinkers. First, we have Bradwick and Genova. So they studied how traditional female traits like being caring, passive, or gentle were shaped by society and not nature. They questioned, are women naturally like this, or are they trained to act this way? Another feminist is Jocelyn Donovan. She believed that feminist criticism must be clear, honest, and based on women's real experiences. So she said, we must listen to women's voices in history and literature. She created the term gender criticism, which focuses on studying women's writing, not believe in breaking fixed labels like women emotional and man is equal to logical. Another is Helen Cizos. She encouraged women to write their bodies, meaning they should write freely, using their personal stories and emotions. She believed in writing that is wild, emotional, and alive, not stiff or controlled. Another feminist is Donna J. Haraway. She wrote a cyborg manifesto, saying that technology can help break gender boundaries. For her, being a cyborg means not being limited by traditional ideas like man versus woman or nature versus machine. She imagined a future where identities are more mixed and free. So to sum it up, liberal feminism and feminist criticism both fight for women's voices, rights, and fair treatment. The thinkers we talk about, like Walter and Haraway, each brought something unique to the movement, helping us look deeper into society, language, and literature. Oh, that will be all. Thank you for listening. So enjoy.